first started in music actually when I was 9, and the church choir that I attended in Philadelphia actually was starting one, and my aunt said, okay, you need to get out of the house, try something new, and I actually auditioned for the choir, and that was the beginning for me when I started in music. And from there I went to a performing arts high school in Philadelphia, which is the Performing Arts, High School for Creative Performing Arts in Philadelphia. And from there I went to the University of Maryland Eastern Shore and also studied music there, and was the first Ella Fitzgerald Scholar. And the rest is history. I'm inspired by conversations. I'm inspired by things I hear people say. Most of the times it's conversations. I could be having a conversation with something, and something will trigger something, or it'll spark an idea. And normally I'll get some ideas from that, or it could be just everything that's happening in life, in my life, or either people that I know. So I'm inspired by everything around me. Some of my favorite artists are artists that I grew up listening to. Anita Baker, I love Rochelle Farrell, Alita Adams, Liz Wright, Layla Hathaway, Angela Winbush. There's so many, I don't even want to leave anyone out. I grew up listening to the Clark sisters. I love listening to Commission. I'm pretty much an eclectic spirit. There's so much that I listen to, so it's really hard to narrow it down to just a few artists, but I grew up listening to those people, and I love the timbre of their voice, and I love the quality of their voice. I've always been drawn to vocalists that had rich, deep voices. I've had the chance to perform with Will Downing and Shantae Moore, just to name a few. There's been so many people that I've also worked with. I've also opened for Dwelle, worked with Marcus Johnson. I've opened for Kim. I've also had the opportunity to work with Stanley Turrentine, actually the late Stanley Turrentine. Recording live actually is where I started. Actually performing live is where I started. And I love it. Actually, I prefer performing live than the studio most of the time. I'm still learning and becoming comfortable with the studio. But I love being on stage because I love interacting with the audience and meeting new people in whatever city I go to. And that's the fun part of it, because it's always something new. And that's the great thing about the stage. Every time you step on it, it's something new. It's a new place. It's a new vibe. New people in the audience. So that's the beauty of performing on stage, and I love it. I would like to see people begin to have more of a thirst for God and not religion. I would like to see people really, really begin to free themselves from all of the things that they've been taught as a child about God, and really begin to seek Him and find out who He is for themselves and develop their own relationship. Yes, I do believe in God. I more than believe in God. I believe everything I have is because God has given it to me, that I can take credit for nothing. And I'd have to say my greatest accomplishment to date has not been necessarily music related. I'd have to say it'd have to be character related, because this whole journey of music actually has been an exercise in developing character. So for me, it's just been getting to a point where I understand who I am and my value. And I'd have to say that's the greatest accomplishment. And that is all because God is working in my life, and then I'm talking to Him and trying to understand who I am through His Son, Jesus. I'd have to say I consider my brand of music inspirational soul. The instrumentation may change from project to project, but the content and the messaging is always consistent. It's always about inspiring and encouraging and talking to people about this journey. And I believe that's at the heart of what I do. So I would have to consider it inspirational soul. The advice that I would give to anyone that's deciding to come into the music game, per se, is really understand what your purpose is and what you want to get out of it and what your motivation is, and to understand who you are. It's very, very, very easy in this business to get sidetracked and lose sight of who you are and why you're doing what you're doing. And for me, I think that's most important, because I think that sets the stage for how you direct and approach your career and understanding what you're in it for. And that would be the greatest advice I would give to anyone in this business. Just know who you are and know what your motivations are for coming into business. My ultimate goal for my music career is actually still developing. I'm still defining what success is for me. But at this current juncture, what I would consider the greatest goal for me would just be able to continue to create music that is relevant, that people identify with and that they can relate to. And I think by doing that, I feel like, I'm on the right track to further honing what I'm defining as success for myself. I feel it's important to put out positive music because every artist of any kind, whether it be a vocalist or whether it be a painter, you have a platform. You have the ears and the attention of people at any given time. And I believe if you have that attention and you have that platform, you owe it to yourself and to people to say something that's relevant to what people need. Because at the end of the day, we have what we have because there's a reason for it. There's a purpose. So if I'm writing a song, at the end of the day, I wanted to say something. I wanted to encourage someone. I wanted to encourage someone to think differently, ask the tough questions, give them a different perspective on something. So I think it's important to do positive music because it changes the world. It changes how people think. It changes how people approach life. The current state of music, pretty interesting. Very different than when I first started in the business as a youngster. I think it's a great time for music because there's so many opportunities and it's just wide open. And I think it's a great time because it's further creating opportunities for entrepreneurship. And I think in the economic climate that we're in right now, it's even more important that people begin to develop multiple ways to be able to earn a living. And I think that's the great thing about the music industry now. It's even more creating more opportunities for entrepreneurship. I've heard comparisons for a lot of artists. I'm still trying to listen for those myself. But I've heard people say, which is an honor, that they hear some influences of Rochelle Farrell. I've heard people say they hear some influences of Anita Baker. I've heard some people say they hear influences of Randy Crawford before. I've heard the gamut. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones, but those are the ones that come off the top of my head that I've heard people say that I'm compared to. And I've also, there's one more. I've heard someone say that they heard a little bit of Lisa McClendon too, in the type and style of music that I do. I keep myself grounded by constantly staying in prayer and asking God, what do you want me to do? Why do you want me to do this here? I'm always asking why. Even probably when I shouldn't be, I should just be obedient and go. But I stay grounded by just constantly staying in prayer and trying to stay focused on what I'm here to do and trying to make sure that I understand my purpose so that I don't get sidetracked. Well, you definitely cannot be in the music business if you are fearful. It's a tough thing. I think fear and value go hand in hand. Normally when you fear something, it's because you're uncertain of its value. And I find that fear is always present in any form of our lives. You can be, fearful of walking out the door. But in the music business, I find that oftentimes fear is what kind of fuels a lot of the drama per se that you might encounter in the business. And for me, I just choose not to approach my career out of a position of fear, but from a position of strength, knowing my value and knowing what I have to bring to the table for audiences. Well, I mean, nobody automatically starts off setting to want to be a role model, but if someone chooses to look at me as a role model and wants to follow in my steps or kind of go on the path, that I've forged, I would have to say I wouldn't necessarily want them to take the same path that I've taken. I would really encourage them to really, really find their own sound, find their own voice, And what they can take from me is just the ability that I have to get things done. I'm very focused. And that's what I would want someone that's, choosing to look up to me, just to take from it that, be consistent, have a lot of follow through, be patient, and establish your own, establish your own rules for the most part, by terms of what you're considering success. So I would, if they're going to pick up anything from me, I'd have to say that, just that diligence, that tenacity, and getting things done and follow through. It has always been my goal, or my dream, to collaborate with producers such as George Duke, Joe Sample. Would love the opportunity to work with Rodney Jerkins. I would also love the opportunity to work with Mervyn Marr, who Take 6, and definitely Fred Hammond from Commission. Those are the ones that I've always had desire to. I'm sorry, and how could I forget? I've always wanted to work with Angela Wimbush. She's a great producer, so those are people that I would love to try to collaborate with. I think if you don't get nervous while you're performing, something's probably wrong, because that energy needs to go somewhere. I do get nervous, but I try to channel it into the performance and wanting to interact with the people. And sometimes when I feel like I can't get the jitters and to stand with me too long, sometimes I come off the stage and come into the audience so that I can talk to people and, kind of get a feel for them. And that way it kind of takes some of that away and really, really get down, off the stage and just meet with the people. So that's what I do. If there was one thing that I could do to help someone, that's a really tough question. But I think the thing that I could do that I think would be most valuable is nothing material. It would be really just having a conversation with them about faith and how they see life and, what God means to them. Not any preconceived notions, not judging or anything, but really just talking to them and starting a dialogue. Because I believe when you change your perception, your life changes. So I think that's the best thing I could do for someone. This is Temika Moore, and this is my latest project, The End of Me, currently available online and in stores and select markets. You can see the video for my latest single, I'm Not Okay, on BET Center. You can also follow me on the web at TemikaMoore.com, and I'm on Twitter and Facebook.